Well, good afternoon, guys. Today I'm hiking up the trail for Butler Fork. I'm at a fork in the trail right now. Millie Basin or Dog Lake Trailhead. I don't have a lot of time to hike today, so I won't be going very far no matter which one I take. But I think I'm gonna go that way today. I come to this place a lot. I'll be back again, but I want to try and head that direction, so let's see what we find. But I must caution, I think most of what I find that's interesting today will be on the way back down. So just starting off here, we're definitely in an aspen forest. Populus tremuloides is the Quaking Aspen, the only species you find around here. But you do find other members of the genus Populus in Utah. All that aside, these forests are really nice because they tend to have a lot of wildflowers as compared to the conifer forests. Because, well, for one, they let in more light, and two, they don't produce a duff of, pine needles and conifer bark, which decays. So that's quite acidic and waxy and just not very pleasant for a lot of plant species. I mean, there's a fair number that will grow in it, but they generally don't grow quite as densely as the wildflowers you see here. And it's just like, not quite as many species, really, let's be honest. Not that I don't love conifer forests, they're great, but if you want to see wildflowers in a forest, you want to come to the aspen forest. Now, it is currently Father's Day, so June 15th for the year 2025. And I still know I'm going to get him. Right, let's carry on. Now, this whole forest is likely a big forest of clonal trees, because this is how aspens work. It's rare for them to reproduce through seed when they can just send up new shoots from the roots and spread outward like that. Well, it's got some stinging nettle on me. There's quite a lot of it you can see right here. Urtica, dioica, very common native plant in these mountains. I don't think it hurts too bad, but if you get a lot of it on you, it's not going to feel great. I think some of the European or Eastern North American varieties, because they're all varieties of the same species, feel a little more intense, or at least they're considered the same species by most authorities. It's one with a sort of global northern hemisphere holarctic distribution. Here we're in a nice meadow. There's a lot of plants I can talk about here. And starting right off, this is a Sambucus racemosa, also known as red elderberry. You can tell apart from the more common blue elderberry by the fact that it is, its inflorescence is more of a raceme instead of a flattened cyme, that almost looks like something from Apiaceae. They can often get a lot more elongated than this, but these ones are rather flattened out for some reason. And it's growing higher in elevation. The blue elderberry, Sambucus cerulea, or carolea, however you want to pronounce it, grows lower down. And actually, I think we can see an example of it right back there. That little white thing right in the center looks more like a Sambucus cerulea inflorescence to me. At least that's the way I try to tell them apart. There may be a better way, but yeah. Now, this big leaf belongs to a Heracleum lanatum or Heracleum maximum. I'm not sure what I always forget what the more proper name is. Either way, it's a cow parsnip. It's a native Heracleum to North America. It can get quite tall, up to 10 feet in some cases, though normally you only see it growing at around 4 or 6 feet tall in its inflorescence, which is, there's the main stem that's starting to grow up there. Sorry, as in the way. This leaf right there. See, it's shoot. It's probably not going to get quite tall at this site, unfortunately, but what can you do? It tends to like really sort of wetter meadows, I guess. And this one's probably only mesic. Here's something interesting. This is a Thalictrum Fendler. I gotta look at if these plants are dioecious, because I think that might be the case. That means that they have male and female plants that only produce either male or female flowers. And this one would probably be the male, actually almost certainly, because those appear to be stamens hanging down. If that were the case, I think it might be, but I can't remember for sure. It's a member of the family Ranunculaceae, so it's probably pretty toxic, but again, you need some toxic plants around. There's nothing wrong with that. Not every plant needs to be forageable or even edible to any animal. Plants can just exist for whatever purpose they want to. Now these things with the sort of the pinnately compound leaves, this is Polemonium foliosissimum, another very common meadow plant, especially in the sort of middle moisture range meadows. It's a member of the family Polemoniaceae, and This one's not quite yet in bloom, but I just noticed that this one, in fact there is, so I'm going to step gently amongst the plants to get a better view of it. See, it looks like a member of the pea family, but it's definitely not when you look at its flowers. There you go. Polemonium is a very important plant family for Western North America. And I think it has definitely most of its diversity out here. I say that a lot, but I'm always getting new subscribers. My channel's doing very, very well lately, so I want to keep repeating myself, you know. Oh, and of course this plant. We can't not talk about this one. This is mountain bluebells, also known as Mertensia ciliata. I do prefer the scientific names, but sometimes we learn plants early, get really attached to the common name, as I am in this case. It's a member of Boraginaceae. Definitely the most common Mertensia you find, at least in the upper elevations. Probably the most common one in the whole Wasatch, let's be real. The one I really see at all very frequently is Brachystyla, which is sort of scattered at lower elevations. I think it's it's Brevistyla, my bad. See, it's so unimportant I can't remember it. I'm just kidding. All these plants are important in their own way, but this one's definitely more common. You see, it's very easily identifiable by its blue, drooping flowers. And yeah, its leaves look rather bluish compared, only a little bit bluish compared to some of the other plants around here. It's a nasty looking Urtica dioica. Oh, it doesn't hurt so much, it just startles me every time I get it. I really hope I'm keeping everything in focus. I'm trying my hardest. Now this is either Geranium viscosissimum, I think, or Richardsonii. I think it's viscosissimum that's more common and tends to be more pinkish. I think you're really supposed to look at the style length or among some other features to tell them apart, but one does tend to be white, maybe a little light pink, and one tends to be purpley pink, sometimes a little light pink. So there's a bit of an overlap there. And I think some people might even be questioning it for different species. This one definitely seems to grow really well in the shade, I should add, with 2 geranium species. They of course have very similar looking leaves, which makes it hard to identify them as well. Some geraniums in other parts of the state. I think I'm going to be going to Bryce Canyon soon, and I hope I can come back with some videos. It depends on a couple of things, but it's something I really want to try and do, because I don't want to make videos around here. I want to visit some other interesting places and make videos. But yeah, those are some of the most common wildflowers you find in a meadow like this in the Wasatch. And I didn't even have to leave the trail to find any of them. I mean, I only barely stepped off of it. But let's see what else we can find. I'm going to go grab my hiking poles and carry on for a little bit. Now, without even looking at my altimeter, I'm guessing around 7,500 feet up in this location. Certainly between 7,000 and 8,000 feet. And I mostly happen to know this because I've been up here before. But you can also tell these things by the vegetation you see growing around you. I mean, it should be pretty obvious that vegetation grows in zones that can be used to an extent, give you an idea of what elevation you're at. But it's really fun when you get really into it and can really know just how high up or down you are just by looking at plants. Here's a good one, and I just recently looked this up to make sure I was getting it right. This is Lathyrus pauciflorus, a native species of Lathyrus. There's a few of them. I used to think it was Lathyrus landsworthii for some reason, but it's definitely not. This one stands out from other native species of Lathyrus by the fact that its keel is shorter than the wings. Which you can definitely see there, right? The little keel doesn't stick past the wings at all. There's a lot of bees pollinating it. It's a twining vine that likes to climb up other plants. I think people sort of maybe intrinsically know this but don't fully realize it. The benefit of being a vine that climbs plants is that you can use less energy building your own self up while getting higher levels of sunlight or higher above other plants to collect sunlight. So instead of spending energy to build a sturdy stem, like say this plant does, or this plant will, you might as well just build your own, or build a weaker stem that climbs around and up a different plant. I could have explained that better, but I'm working on it. Oh, here's something cool. See, the ones I saw early, lower down in elevation, we're still in bloom, while this one seems to be past that. This is Actaea rubra. It is a member of the family Ranunculaceae, commonly known as Baneberry. It can produce red berries. It's one of the few, I think, members of Ranunculaceae that produces red berries. Currently it's really green and undeveloped, but eventually, as I said, they'll become red. That's what its leaves look like. I love this plant a lot. I think it's so cool. You can't eat the berries at all because they, as all members of Ranunculaceae are, they're at least a little bit toxic, so not safe to do so, but they look so inviting when they're all red, you know, right in front of your face. What can you do? Well guys, I'm gonna start heading back soon. I'm at a point where I'm gonna turn around. Not that this is the end of the video, but I'm gonna turn around here. There are a couple other things I want to talk about though, and the first one is this plant. This is a really interesting one. It is Corydalis cassiana. It is a member of the family Papaveraceae, formerly Fumariaceae before it was moved into the poppy family. And this one's really interesting because it's got a fairly, it's actually fairly widespread, but not found in many places. Like you can find it east to the Colorado Rockies and west of the Sierra Nevadas, and of course in the Wasatch, but this is the only spot it's really found in Utah, in the Wasatch Mountains, growing in running rivers. It's a very riparian plant. It loves growing. You'll only see it growing along waterways like this, sometimes directly in the waterway, like this guy is, or that one down there. There's a couple other sites in the Wasatch. I've seen it before. I can't remember what they are though. This seems to be the best one for it, however. And it's growing quite thick here. Like locally, it's the most common plant along this stretch of the river for whatever reason, but you don't find it much other places. And these are what its flowers look like. Now, Fumariaceae was known for having the bleeding hearts. I guess this flower kind of looks a little bit like a bleeding heart in a way. I think it has a nectar spur. Yeah, it definitely sticks back like quite a lot. Like they have a, yeah, that's probably a spur. That's typically what those things are for, when you see a part of the flower projecting back as such. But anyways, yeah, let's start heading down now. Something important to talk about that Corydalis is that though I said it was kind of rare, it was also very common at that location, and that's something important to know. Most plant species that are rare aren't really rare, and then you only find like a couple of plants in a few different spots. You usually find them fairly densely growing in a narrow range of places. That's pretty important to know because you can find plants that are common and locally and widespread. You can find some plants that are rather narrowly distributed, but usually pretty common in there, such as that plant in its range. But if you find a plant that's both has a very range restricted and is not very common within that range, that plant is in trouble city and is probably not going to, might be on its way towards extinction because that's usually not very sustainable. There could also be plants that are widespread but not very common in any particular place. That's sort of a more viable strategy for plants that are like, say, the netleaf hackberry. That's sort of a quintessential example I can think of from the Wasatch, where it lives a long time, so it doesn't need to be super densely packed in a certain place for it to survive. It lives long enough to reproduce and produce berries every year that, you know, even if it doesn't end up very abundant, it can still survive. Well, it turns out I was right about the Thalictrum fendleri. This is a female plant which has already been pollinated, so you can see its ovaries or carpels are developing into the fruits now. I'm using fruit in the broad botanical sense. Well, meanwhile, here is a male plant with its drooping stamens. Wish I could have cut the female flowers in action, but so it might be, oh, there we go. Wait, no. Yeah, sorry, that was just a Scrophularia lanceolata right there, but I thought was part of the plant, but it's not. It's just Scrophularia lanceolata, which is cool either way, but still. Well, I thought this might be the case not long after finishing the clip earlier where I was talking about the meadow plants, but this plant actually isn't a Sambucus cerulea. This is a Sorbus scopolina. They actually are in completely different families. This is a member of the rose family. It is the sort of native Utah rowan species you can find growing in these mountains here. Some rowans in Europe are growing like full-on trees up to 60 feet tall, but this one's just a bit of a large shrub, maybe small tree up to like 15 feet or about 5 meters. I want to remember to use meters more often because I got some metric inclined audience, but you know, whatever. But they do have very similar looking inflorescences, so. And this is also probably the highest elevation you could find Sambucus cerulea out, but you're definitely going to find the Sambucus racemosa more commonly. Like, okay, whoa, that was some low ISO. Well, there was a couple of other things I want to talk about on the way down, but for some reason or another, I just couldn't find them. I want to talk about the two Heracleum species you can find at the mid to high elevations in the Wasatch, and Meanthemum racemosa, because I saw that one around, but I didn't get a chance, so I'll just finish with this tree. This is the other common non-riparian maple you can find in the state. This is Acer glabrum, also known as the Rocky Mountain maple. It's not nearly as common, in my opinion, as Acer grandidentatum, but we do grow in different habitats. As you can tell, this one grows in the mid to upper elevations, sometimes in riparian areas, but also just on slopes like this. That's what its leaves look like. They are sort of compound at times. This one's not, but they can be a little bit compound like this. Yeah, it just becomes compound. I don't know what else to say about it, but this is what it looks like. Basically produces a ton of short stems that don't ever get too tall, as you can see here. So yeah, the Rocky Mountain maple, guys. Thanks for watching, and see you next time from Bryce Canyon.